Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is a CL-16 kind of overview deep dive. It's like if we came to a dealer and we're talking to you guys at an event like that. As we go, we'll be fielding questions. So if you look down at the bottom, there is a chat box. You can type that in. That'll come to me. I will relay those to Paul when we've kind of hit like a little natural breaking point. It'll be an overview of features. If you guys have questions, please feel free to ask them. If you have feature requests, just hang on to those. Those can always go to our support team, support@sounddevices.com. That's the best way to get those logged to make sure that they get into the system and our design group looks at them. I think that's it. Just another quick note. I give the spiel every time. Make sure you are registering your product. If you have purchased a CL-16, make sure you register at sounddevices.com. That extends your warranty by 1 year, which is great to have. It also makes sure that you are opted in for any communications on the MixPre, the 8 series. It's going to make sure that you get training updates when we do more trainings in the future. It's also going to let you know when new firmware is released. Okay, so I think everyone's here. That's it for me. I will take, or I'll let Paul take it over.
Thanks, Joe. Good morning, everybody. Hope all is well out there in the various parts of the world. So yeah, hi, Chris and everyone else. So yeah, today is really a deep dive operational training on the CL-16, which is now out there in the wild. Yeah, this is not really an overview webinar or a sales spiel or anything like that. It's really for those who are interested how it actually you operate the thing. So we're going to get really sort of quite deep into navigation, and I'm actually going to demonstrate sort of real time how that works. So as Joe said, feel free to someone's inviting me to a meeting. I thought Nicholas would know, but anyway, so I'm not going to go to that meeting. I'm going to stay here with you guys. Without further ado, let's get into it. And by the way, feel free to ask questions as we go. As Joe pointed out, just tap away. If we sort of like leave it too long, then these questions are going to build up and sort of like not sort of make sense in the general flow. So feel free to do that. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to change my camera view here and show what we're really interested in, which is this baby, obviously. Okay, so here we have the CL-16 hooked up to a Scorpio, and as you know, the CL-16 is also compatible with the 888, but for this demonstration I'm going to do it all with the Scorpio because that has the full 32 ISO channels, so it'll allow me to show you how to access those and mix those. Very quickly, before we sort of get into the operation of this, I'm going to just quickly talk about how to connect the unit. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position really to sort of move the CL-16 around or the Scorpio around without upsetting the presentation that I'm showing you here, because I've got it quite nicely aligned at the minute. But I think it's fairly self-explanatory. So the CL-16, you need to have both a USB connection to your Scorpio, and you need a separate DC power for your CL-16. So it's got a 4-pin XLR input on the CL-16 on this side just here on the rear, and that takes anywhere between 10 and 18 volts. So yep, it can be driven by an external battery, obviously. The connection to your 8 series, you connect the A port, the USB A port on your 8 series to the rear panel USB B port. Okay, it's essential. There's a whole bunch of USB connectors on the rear of the device, so make sure you plug into the USB B. Now, a recommendation here. A recommendation here is if you're using other USB peripherals with your 8 series CL-16 setup, use the hub that's actually built into the CL-16. There's a really powerful hub on the with 5 ports, which are accessible via the rear panel. 3 are USB-A and 2 are USB-C. So there's no real need to use the, to go via a hub actually plugged into your Scorpio. And the USB ports on here, the USB-A ports have like up to 1.5 amp per port, and the USB-C ports are up to 3 amps. So there's plenty of power there. Just to talk about some of the other connectors on the rear panel before we get started into the operation of this, we also have a Phoenix connector with 8 GPIO ports and plus volts and negative volts. And so you can use this to be triggered from external devices or switches, or which can be mapped to almost any function within the CL-16, or let's say many functions. And you can also configure those Phoenix outputs to be outputs, so you can drive LEDs, bulbs, alarms, and that sort of thing, or trigger external recorders. And then we also have a foot switch port, which is a TRS port, where you can map 2 foot pedal functions, which can be useful if you want to do hands-free dropping in and out of record, or hands-free comms, or anything like that. Okay, so that's the connectivity. I'm not really going to spend any time on talking about, how to remove faders. I mean, I've gone over this many times, but suffice to very quickly say, and you can read about this in the user guide that's online now, is that to remove a fader first servicing or a quick clean or whatever is super easy. It's just 2 screws to drop out a fader, remove the knob here, and then there's 2 screws on the bottom of the CL-16, which you just remove, pull out the panel, disconnect a cable, and the fader pops out. It's very quick. Okay, so let's start setting up this baby. And I think that is like a good way to tackle this, to just talk you through how we set up an input via the channel strip, say route that input to your main mix, then talk about how we can route that input to other buses, and then how to route channels to your outputs. I think that's a good starting place, because that's going to reveal much of what this is about. And by the end of this, you're going to start to get familiar with the paradigm of operation. So let's just look at this area first, the P&G faders. These are always your faders for channels 1 through 16. They're not switchable, they're not bank switchable. To control your channels 17 through 32, you will be doing that via these multifunction encoders, or via like another external controller plugged in, which has linear faders, but more about that shortly. So yeah, we have fixed faders. These are always your faders. So you know that when you hit these, you're always mixing your main channels. Likewise, this bottom row of knobs here are your trim pots. They are always trims for channels 1 through 16. So you know at any time you're controlling that channel. You can ride it. It's really very easy to ride a trim and a fader at the same time. So they are fixed. Now all the other knobs here and these toggle switches can change their function. Let's talk about these toggle switches first. These are your solo and select toggles. So solo, you move left, okay, like so. And you can see that when you're PFLing, it's actually flashing yellow. Okay, so it's a very quick indication of which channel you're soloing. Not only does it solo there and show you there, but if you look in the bottom of your right hand screen here where the headphone status field is, you can see it flashing the particular PFL you're soloing. So there's 2 areas there which give you that indication. So when I do that, it goes back to my headphone preset, which by default is your left-right mix, although that can be changed. So again, so come in here and you can see that now flashing and this flashing. All right. Okay, so that's a very quick solo. Now that was moving the PFL toggle left. If you move it right, it also solos. Okay, but moving it right, the main purpose of that is to access the channel setup screen for that channel. So let's actually do this real world here. So I've got a mic plugged into channel 1 right now. Actually, let's route that mic to a different channel, because as you know, with the 8 series architecture, I can take any physical input and route it to any channel almost, you know. Well, channels 1 through 16 for certain. Channels 17 through 32 have a limited range of options, but they still offer plenty of options. So let's say, for instance, route my mic here, which I've got plugged in, to channel 6. So to set up channel 6, I have to move the switch right. That's my select. And notice, I'll do that again. Notice a few things will happen. Channel 6 will by default solo, so it will start flashing yellow, and it will indicate the solo in there again, just like just doing a normal PFL. But it will also highlight the particular channel in white that you're setting up. It will also change this area here to show you the number and the name of the channel you're editing. And these 2 top rows of labeling in the display, you can see these labels running along the top here. There's 2 rows, one here and one here. Those labels will correspond to the functions of these PFLs. So you're going to see when I PFL this channel, you're going to see the 2 top rows change. And actually, before we do this, we should talk about this default state that we're in right now. When you boot up, this is like the view you're going to see. And essentially, it's channels 1 through 16 on the display, which correspond vertically with these strips. So channel 6 here goes all the way up through the trim, through these encoders to your status here, and the name and the channel number and the meter for that channel, as well as the pan indication. So that's the default view. Now, the top row by default, when you get this thing from the factory, is your output level and status. Okay, and that's actually indicated by a label up here. These 2 labels basically give you an overview of what each row is adjusting, and then each cell above each channel will tell you the actual specific value. So in this case, these are outputs because it says they're outputs, and this is X3, which is controlled by this part because it corresponds to that position. And now I know that I can adjust that to adjust the output of X3's level, okay, and vice versa. So there's a quick overview of the way these labels work. They basically tell you what each of these multi-function knobs does. In the case where there's a blank here, 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 here on the top row, that means they do nothing. Surprise, surprise, okay? Okay, so let's go back to this fat channel and setting up channel 6. So to set up a channel, as I said before, I flick the toggle switch right. It's soloing, indicated by this flashing yellow. It's flashing in the display. As I said before, the channel that's being adjusted will have a white background. So I know it's this channel. If I go to others, you can see very quickly which channel you're adjusting. So it's a good visual indication. And not only that, it shows the meter for this particular channel you're adjusting on the left-hand side. So if I do that again, normally this left-hand side shows you your media remaining record time. So we've got SSD, SD1, SD2. It's telling you how much remaining space you have on each piece of media, and also your power health values. So not for the Scorpio itself, but also the CL-16. So this is really useful information. And at the bottom here, it tells you what your whole view is doing. In this case, I'm looking at channels 1 through 16. Okay, but when I hit a fat channel, I'm going to do that again. Watch what happens here. Okay, so you can see now it says, oh, I'm editing channel 6. You'll see that I can actually, that's the name and that's the actual channel number. Okay, so flashing here, white background. the channel meter comes in there. And as I go from channel to channel, you can see that that meter changes. So you've got many visual bits of information on the screen to let you know where you are. So back to channel 6 here. Now, obviously, let's keep an eye now on this top row of information. Okay, I'm going to come out again. So here's my outputs, my default outputs, my pan indications. Now, when I go into a screen to edit it, watch what happens to the 2 top rows. Boom. Wow, there's a lot of changes there. If you look along here, you can see all different parameters like delay, limiter, the source name that you selected, the channel name, EQ, although this is grayed out at the minute because I haven't turned EQ on. I can turn EQ on by using this control. It says EQ off at the moment. So that corresponds to this top knob, right? EQ there. So if I just turn that, now my EQ is on. It's set to pre-fade, but I typically like to apply post-fade, so I'm turning it again. So now my EQ is essentially on, and I can turn on the various bands, but we're going to talk a bit more of that in a minute. So, but what I wanted to show you is that when we go into channel screen, these 2 top rows of encoders now change their function to controlling various aspects of the selected channel, in this case, channel 6. Okay. And so let's go and make a few settings here while we're here. So I want channel 6 to be my mic input 1, because that's where I've got a mic physically plugged into my Scorpio up here. It's in the XLR1. So my source select field is here. It's telling me currently it's set to mic 6, XLR6. Hopefully you can see that. Well, I don't have anything plugged into mic 6, so that's why I'm not seeing anything. So, but to select a different input, oh, and before I do this, there's one last thing I wanted to tell you about when you go into fat channel. Sorry for keep on backtracking here, but I want to give you all the information you need. I'm going to come out of this fat channel again by just flicking that switch the same direction again. Okay, so that's in. I can flick that same switch to come out. Alternatively, if I want to just go back to the main screen, this button here, and I'm going to keep saying this throughout this training, this meter button will always take you back to the default view no matter where you are in the interface. It's like an ejector seat. If you don't know where you are and you need to get out of wherever you are in an emergency, just hit this button. It'll always take you back to default. It's a home button. Okay, so when you go into fat channel, not only does it all those things I've already mentioned, but it also brings up the associated channel screen on the 8 series itself. So let's do that. Keep an eye on the display up here, and boom, there you go. It's changed to just the channel screen. And essentially, this layout here replicates what's up here, but it gives you much faster control, as we're going to see now. So we're in our channel 6 fat channel, as I like to call it, or channel screen, whatever you want to call it here. And I wanted to select my mic 1. So I'm going to come up here, and this knob here corresponds to the source select. So if I press this, you're going to see it bring up the matrix, the source to channel matrix on our 8 series. So as I press the button, boom, there you go. Right. So now I can select a different input, and I don't have to use any of the controls on the 8 series. I never have to. When I'm working with the CL-16, I should never, ever have to touch the 8 series. It can all be done down here. So, I mean, I don't know how clearly you can see this, but as you can see, I'm scrolling along using my select encoder here. I'm going to set this to mic 1, which is there. Boom. Okay. Oh, so now I've selected that. I want to make sure I have some gain on there. So 1, 2, 2, 2. So I'm turning up my trim gain, and there you see it. Right? Turn the trim all the way down, and it's gone. So this current setup I have right now is I have mic 1 going to both input 1 here and input channel 1 and channel 6. very easy to mix up the terms input and channel, but I really do want to try and be specific here. An input is a physical source, a physical connector, like a, like an XLR, like a USB, like a Dante, like an AES, and the channel is the ISO channel you're routing that input to. And that's one of the great things about the flexibility of the 8 series is you can really route any physical input to any channel, multiple channels actually. I could have mic input 1 going to all 16 channels at different levels if I was very paranoid about the level that I'm recording at, but not really necessary. Okay, so that's how you select an input source. And also from here, I can, while I'm in the channel screen here, I can very easily select any source. I could select Dante sources. If you keep an eye on here, I could select my SL6, AES sources, any sources. And you can put Phantom here, again, using this toggle, because these 3 toggles here essentially duplicate the 3 toggles here. So any soft function you see on the toggles labeled up here will be controlled by these as well. So I could turn Phantom on here just by moving that. So as I said, no need to touch the 8 series at all. That was a big advantage over the CL-12 and the 688. Okay, so now I've set up my source. Maybe I want to name this source. At the moment it's called channel 6, but that's not particularly friendly. So to name that channel, you can see the names there, there's the name. I have to press encoder 1 now because that corresponds with this cell here. So if I press that, you'll see the keyboard come up on here. It probably is going to be a bit saturated in terms of the brightness. I've tried to get that better. I can't do any better than that, sadly, but here's the keyboard essentially for this channel. Pressing that encoder has automatically brought that up. So I'm just going to type in here boom, and let's just call that boom for now. Not that I normally put it on channel 6, but it'll do. Okay, so now I'm going to hit save by using this toggle here, and you'll see the name change. So let's do that. There you go. It's changed to boom. So now I know my channel is boom, and it's also got the name down here. It's got the channel number still, but it's also got the name there, and it's got the name there. All right, let's label another channel just to do that again. So I'm going to go to channel 1 this time. And notice I can go from channel to channel screen directly. I don't have to come out of that mode first. So I'm going to channel 1 now. All right, I'm going to call this something. Let's see. I'm going to just call it my name because I know how to spell that. Okay. And I can do lowercase and uppercase as well if I want, but that'll do for now. So I've called that Paul. So now I've got Paul on channel 1 and boom on 1. I'm looking at Paul as indicated there. And if I come here, now I'm looking at boom. So you've got very clear indication of what channel you're adjusting there. Okay, let's carry on moving along. So we've spoken about what these 2 knobs do, and really they only have a press function. Some of them have rotate functions. For instance, this one here, I'm on channel 6, remember, channel 6. This knob here is actually my delay, input delay, channel delay. So channel delay is what you know it's all about, to compensate for wireless, etc. So that's just a rotate, and it gives you the value there. If I press the pot, it will do a polarity invert, indicated by the green icon. That means it's inverted. Notice that it's also showing me the inverted state on the ring LED surrounding this knob. So when I press it, it goes off there and there. Moving along, we have limiter on or off. That's fairly straightforward. And then we have our EQ bands. I'm going to turn all of them on. Now, to turn on a band, you can press any of the knobs within that band. Oh, before I get to that, let's look at high pass filter. So you might not be able to see this on your screen. If you've got CL-16 in front of you, you should be able to see it, but it will have the text. It's got high pass filter, but it's grayed out because I haven't turned it on. To turn on the high pass filter, I just press the knob that's associated with this cell, and then it turns it on. You see that? So keep pressing on, off. You can see how that changes. Once it's on, I can, set my frequency for the high pass filter, the 3 dB roll off point. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that, so about 120. Leave that on, and then moving along, I can apply EQ. I've got 3 bands of EQ per channel on channels 1 through 16. So if I wanted to apply some low frequency band EQ, I can just press any of the 4 pots associated with LF, and they've all got the label LF, 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 LF. Okay, mid frequency has MF, 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 and high frequency HF, 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 and they're color coded as well. So you know that low frequency band is orange, mid is yellow, and high frequency is green, just to make it a bit obvious there. Okay, so now I'm in here, and like I said, I can press any of those pots to bypass that band. Okay, but make sure if nothing's happening when you're pressing here, that you have your EQ turned on up here, because if I turn that off, they do nothing because it's off. So you need to set that EQ on to either pre-fade or post-fade. Okay. The first pot is pretty obvious that that's adjusting gain because it's got dB values here. And if I wanted to see my EQ, I can come and look at the screen here. You can see the effect of the EQ on my curve there. Here's my frequency. Here's my Q value. And here's the type. Currently it's set to peak, and now it's shelf, peak, shelf. All right. And I can do the same with all my other bands as well. So this is a strange EQ curve if I've ever seen one. And what have you. All right. So there you go. That's how you do your EQ. That's our middle row of knobs gone through. Now let's talk about the top row, these ones that are currently blue. And this is pretty useful. And you can see it's labeled sends. So we're talking about here sends to buses. And so let's have a look. And currently they're all blue. I'm just going to turn them off just by doing that and take you through what. Now, when these are not lit up at all and these are black background, it means that you're not sending the currently selected channel, in this case, channel 6, to any of the buses. Yes, it's going to the main left-right. So if I bring up my fader here, you can see it's now going to my left-right mix meters here on the right-hand side. Bring that down, it's gone. Bring it up, it's there, okay? So yeah, I'm sending signal to the main mix bus, as you would expect when you raise your fader. But I'm not sending that channel to any of the buses. Now, what if I want to send this channel as an IFB feed to a crew member on set, and I wanted them to have their own individual bus so that I can make settings on that bus without affecting what I'm doing on the main mix? Well, this is the way you do that. So let's say I'm on channel 6, the fat channel screen for channel 6, and then these 10 knobs along here determine the amount of channel 6 I'm currently selected to, how much of that channel 6 and which buses I'm going to send it to. So let's just say send it to bus 1 right now. So bus 1 is here on this pot, right? Remember, I'm only adjusting channel 6 here. So I'm going to adjust this pot here to send channel 6 to bus 1. So first of all, I need to turn it on. Again, press. Now the first press makes it go green. That means I'm sending to that bus pre-fade, which means it's dependent upon channel 6's trim level, which is this one here, right? That's the trim level here. So that's going pre-fade send is going to be dependent upon the trim level. Okay. If I press that again, now it turns to orange, and it's telling me now I'm sending channel 6 to bus 1 post fade. So it's not only going to be dependent upon my trim level, but also the fader level. If I was to pull that fader all the way down now, it's not going to go to my main mix anymore, and it's not going to go to bus 1 anymore because I've set it to be post fader, right? This is where it gets really interesting, and this is what makes the CL-16 8 series far more, ooh, didn't mean to do that. I hope we're back where we are. There you go. This is what makes the 8 series CL-16 far more interesting. Now, if I press this again, it now goes light blue. And now this pot, it's not going pre-fade or post-fade anymore. It's going via its totally independent gain level. So even, well, actually it's going to be dependent on the trim, but it's now going to be totally independent of this fader. Think now of this adjustment I'm making here as I rotate bus 1 send value as its own fader contribution of the selected channel, in this case channel 6, to that bus. So I could have it going to the main mix really quite loud on this at 0 dB to my main mix, but maybe I want to send it much lower level, say, I don't know, minus 14 dB to that bus. Okay, so you can see now that I'm making a totally different mix. Obviously, the trim affects both feeds, but the faders are independent. So this is the way you can set up 12 fully independent mixes, bus left, right, plus 10 buses. Now, obviously, on the 888, we only have 8 independent buses plus LR, still a lot, more than you probably need. Okay, so I've sent my channel 6 to bus 1. Maybe I also want to send it post fade to bus 3. In which case it would be dependent on this. Maybe I want to send it pre-fade to bus 4. Maybe I want to send it via its own gain to someone else on set at a different level again, up here. So you can see how flexible this is, and this can all be done from this channel screen, right? For now, I'm just going to do this, not route it anywhere, okay? Apart from bus 1, let's put it onto bus 1. That's sort of like, I don't know, that -3. Okie doke. Moving further along on let's discuss what these 5 knobs do here, which correspond with these 5 labels. We've already spoken about this one. This is where you turn your EQ on for that channel, whether it's pre or post. Then we have whether this channel is going to be routed through the built-in auto mixer in our 8 series. In fact, the reason why that's grayed out right now is because I don't have the auto mixer on, which I can easily do. I'm just going to come to my menu here. As you can see, I'm on my menu. I'm navigating it from my CL-16. Just going to quickly go to auto mixer and turn that on. There you go. It's enabled now. Normally I allocate one of these user buttons here to turning my mix assist on or off, but more about that soon. Okay, so back to my channel screen for channel 6. Remember, move the toggle right, boom, there you go. And here we are. And now you can see, well, hopefully you can see, it's not very bright here right now, but here's my auto mix on, off. Actually, you can see by this pink, is it pink or purple? Well, purplish pink LED glows here to let you know your auto mix for that channel is on. That's easy. Then you've got a pan control for this channel. It's currently set to center, but it gives you, as I adjust it, it shows you the value here from left 100 to center to right 100. And if you need to get back to center very quick, just press it and it jumps back to center. And then we've got how we route this channel to our main left and right mix bus. Now, normally in like 95% of scenarios, you're going to route your channels to your main mix post faders, right? Which is orange, indicated by orange. And you can see orange here and orange here. But if I press that again, now I've taken that channel very quickly, channel 6 very quickly out of the bus left and right. I can then make it go pre-fade, can have one, you're going pre-fade to one and post-fade to the other, what have you, okay? There you go, and that is a fact channel. Very simple, okay, and very fast to make parameters. It beats, for sure, navigating through each field and like you do with an 8.8 series and going to each field and make a change using the one encoder. You can literally just dive for a pot. And like once you've done this, you know, a few times, it really does become very fast. The muscle memory you develop very quick. So you don't even need to look at these labels. You just know instinctively where you are. And that comes pretty quickly. Okay. So what we're going to do now is, while we're in this channel, I do want to say one thing. You remember that when we enter a fat channel, by moving it right, it does automatically solo that channel as well. Now, there are some times when you're making an adjustment to a channel where you don't want to solo it. You still want to listen to the main mix. You know, you might be applying an EQ, or you might be adjusting pan, or adding delay, or you need to be able to hear the effects of that on the channel, but whilst in the mix. So to override that default PFL, you can simply, just cancel it by moving the toggle left. And now you can see it stopped flashing. I'm still on the fat channel. You can see that very clearly from the white background here. And you can see it's showing left-right stereo here. So I'm listening to my mix. So I can quickly toggle backwards and forwards between those just by moving that left or right, just left, okay? Alternatively, you can come into, just press your headphone encoder down here, and that will toggle between the PFL and the headphone preset. Okay, let's come out of our fat channel, and I'm going to do it using my favorite method of home button, otherwise known as the meter button. And let's, at that point, I think it might be worth taking a few questions relating to PFL and fat channel. Joe?
Sure. Asking, do the input options become visible as you scroll through the inputs on the CL-16 screen, or just on the Scorpio?
As of this time, it's only on the Scorpio's panel. Our plans over time are to bring more and more of the graphic layout on the CL-16 display. So that is something that will be evolving.
So Richard, I think that answers your question as well. When changing routing, is there a display of selected inputs on the CL-16? So yes, eventually. Let me see. Will the gain that you've set via the CL-16 be remembered when you cycle the power?
Which gain are you talking about? Yes, essentially yes. Provided, so here's the thing. We should probably talk about this a little bit.
Sure.
What happens if you disconnect the CL-16 from the 8 series by pulling the USB cable or powering down? So let's actually do that right now. We can set the values up here, trim values, what have you. So I'm going to pull that. So the CL-16 has gone down, even though it's still got power. I've removed the cable, so it goes dark. So when that happens, you can see on the CL-16, on the 8 series LCD, it will say control surface unplugged. So it's letting you know that there's a break in connection. Now, if that was accidental, you could simply plug it back in. And at this point, with it disconnected, no levels have changed, okay? Nothing has changed. Provided you plug in your USB cable without adjusting any faders, it's just going to reconnect, and you can see the message will let's see here. Okay, that's interesting. That wasn't a very good demonstration. I'm going to try that again. I think I just had a lockup. Interesting. Not a very good thing to happen on a demo, but nevertheless, we'll just reboot here and turn this back on, and notice that it escaped that freeze just by hitting the power switch. So I'm going to power up again. Bear with me.
In the meantime, the trim on 6 is now analog gain independent from 1 or just a digital trim because you plugged into input 1 and mapped to channel 6.
So the trim gains, if I've mapped that input, if I understand the question correctly, if I've mapped that same physical input, mic input, to multiple channels, the trims are independent. And that's the clever thing about it. A bit of magic going on behind the scenes. So yeah, even the trims are independent. Does that answer the question?
Yes. And then can you route more than one input to a channel? No, but you can route multiple inputs to a bus.
Well, it's more multiple channels to a bus. Yes, you can put multiple inputs to a bus, and if you wanted to arm those buses, you can. You've got buses 1 and 2 can be armed as well, so you could treat them like a sort of multi-channel ISO if you really wanted. If that makes sense, a multi-channel ISO, really, that's a bus. But okay. Okay, so I want to try that again, because if this is a bug, we need to fix it. So if I remove that, it goes down, comes up with a message. If I plug back in, the CL-16 is going to boot up, and provided I didn't, okay, so it's recovered properly. So no levels would have changed in that disconnect, all right? Now, if I pull the USB plug, and where it says that message, okay, I'll do it again, come here, it says unplugged. If it says, are you sure you want to disconnect, and you click okay, then it's going to revert now back to the 8 series control interface, where the faders here will make adjustments, okay? So any adjustment I make here now is going to be reflected on the mix. Okay, now if I plug this back in, it will now revert to the faders and trims on this console. That's something worth noting. All right. So yeah, so that's disconnecting there and what have you. So let's talk about some other functions here. Moving on, I want to talk now about other channel specific functions of these 2 rows of encoders. All right. Now, because what we've just looked at here with the fat channel is you're in a mode essentially where you're setting parameters just for that channel, right? And although it's very quick to go through from channel to channel to channel to make those settings, sometimes you just want access to all 16 channels worth of parameters. Just like you've got, I've got my 16 trims available, I've got my 16 faders. I might want my EQs for all 16 channels available up here. Might want all my pans for channel 16 through 32 up here. So I can just literally dive from pot to pot. That's more of a traditional analog console type feel. So we've designed that to work here. So let's take a look at what we've got on offer. Now, what we're going to use to choose the parameters that are on these encoders are these 5 buttons over here. These are what we call the mode buttons, and these are going to become very important to you because they determine what these encoders do. All right, so let's look at the top left one here. It's called pan. So if I press that, boom, it goes a pink color, and now and you'll also see that when I press that, if you keep your eye on this bottom label here, it comes up with the word pan. And that's telling you that now this row, this middle row, i.e. these knobs here, are now my pan controls for 1 through 16. So now I can rotate them, and you can see by the blue in the display, hopefully you can see that clear enough, that they're showing you the pan indication. Even if I come out of pan mode, it's still going to show me the pan information. All right, but if I want to make a pan adjustment, I just come in here and adjust channel 4 pan, channel 6 pan, 7 pan, channel 16 pan. It's very quick to go through. If I want to go from fully left, maybe create a left mix here and then a right mix here, it's very simple to do that. And what else we've got going on here? Oh, you know what? What's going on here? I'm just wondering if I'm running a beta on my, I think I'm running a beta version of firmware on my Scorpio. So this is why we're seeing some issues here. I'm going to just reboot this. This is rather embarrassing. But yeah, I've got a feeling I'm running a beta, which we're working on for the next release of this, which is always prone to lack of stability. Hasn't been through our QA department yet. So just coming back here again, going panning and setting a pan. What I want to show is you can very quickly get back to center if you need to, just by hitting a pot here. All right. Right. So that's pan. So that's one of the functions. Let's go to another function. Now below that, there's a button called arm. Now this is one of the only buttons that you have to hold to make an adjustment. And that's intentional, because we never want to arm or disarm a channel accidentally. But when you're holding the button, you can see that the ring LEDs, some ring LEDs start to illuminate to tell you which ones are armed. All right. It's also got the arm, obviously, information in the LCD here at the bottom. It's the red box at the bottom show that the channel's armed. Grey here at the bottom means unarmed. So now if I hold that, I can arm other channels. Right. Oops, you didn't see that. So it's very easy to come in there and arm. I can literally do that super fast. Right. And I can obviously do all this during record as well, because as you know, we have the ability to arm tracks during record, which is a brand new feature of the 8 series. So one thing while we're here, we spoke about the color of these boxes. And what I wanted to show you is if a channel is off, let's say set channel 9 here, I'm going to that channel. If I set it to off, so again, I'm going to press my source selector here, and I'm just going to turn that off. Right. Now notice when I turned it off, the text in this field, I don't know if you can see that, is now grayed out. So it's a very quick indication. I'll turn it on again. So that channel is now active, but it's not armed. It's grey. The text is white, but it's not armed because it's not red. If I press it again, the text has gone out because I've deselected all sources to that channel. All right, so that is a very quick visual for you that you're not on. I'm going to leave that off for now. Okay, let's see. I'm going to come out of there, back to my main view. And while we're talking about colors of these cells, then there is another color as well that you might see, and that is if you mute a channel. We haven't even spoken about muting channels. We've spoken about PFLing them. If I want to mute a channel, which essentially pulls it right out of the mix, the ISOs and everything, right at the front end, to do any muting, and this is by design as well, because you definitely don't want to accidentally mute, just like you don't want to accidentally arm or disarm. You have to hold the menu button here to do any form of muting. So if I hold that and now press a trim pot, so let's do this one, you can see it goes blue. It goes blue in the display as well, right? So that's a very quick thing. So mute, now I can't unmute them just by simple press. I have to hold the menu button to bring them back. So it's a fail safe. We actually just recently added this functionality to the icon controller as well, where you have to hold a shift button before it mutes, because there are a few issues with people accidentally muting. So that was good feedback from the user base. There you have it. Well, let's just keep one of these channels muted. Let's just do 16 for now, just to show that it's always there. Okay, so hold arm to essentially do your arming. Simple. That's showing me 1 through 16. When it comes to talking about these bank for channels 17 through 32, I'll show you how arm status is shown there as well. But I'm focusing on channels 1 through 16 at the minute, because this is where you're going to be spending your time 95% of the time, methinks. Okay. So we've spoken about pan, we've spoken about how to arm. Let's look at this button here in the bottom right corner. So we're going around this way. It's called delay. So if I hit that, yeah, if I hit that, now that button illuminates and the label here says delay, for obvious reasons. So now I can use this middle row of encoders, because that's where it's pointing, to adjust my delays for all my channels 1 through 16 very quickly, and I can press them to invert them. All right, and you can see that by the green icon, etc., etc. All right, good. So that's delay. Now, very quickly, I'm going to come back to this button. This is the bus button. This is where you can actually start to look at your bus masters. And remember, we have not just left, right, but we also have 10 other buses. So when I press that button, the screen changes to showing me buses 1 through 10 here, and left and right here, which are also duplicated horizontally here. And so I'm looking at my bus levels right now. As you remember, I sent my channel 6 to bus 1. That's why I've got signal there right now. Notice when I'm in buses mode, not only does the LCD change, it's pretty obvious because you've got this hole here because these encoders do nothing. But also it shows you the word buses in the bottom left corner down here. All right. And this row of knobs on this middle row here are bus gains. So these are my bus master levels. All right. Very simply, bus master levels there. All right. The top row are my outputs. So now these are my output attenuation. All right. Now from here, I can actually mute buses and outputs as well. So if I, again, remember about muting, that you always have to press and hold the menu button to mute anything on the channels. This also applies to your buses and outputs. So here I'm in the bus view. If I hold that, I just hold that there and reach over and press this knob here, that'll be bus 1. I'm now muting bus 1, bus 3, bus 6, all right? But only when I'm holding down this button. So that's a very quick way to mute buses. And likewise, this top row is my outputs X1 through X10. I can mute these very quickly. All right. Notice here on outputs X9, they're actually linked. You can link neighboring outputs and neighboring buses. When it's linked, you find that the two fields are joined together rather than independent cells. So now if I press either one of that one there, it's the odd one, it's going to mute both because they're linked. All right. And adjusting the lower fader is going to adjust both outputs at the same level. All right. I can, as you know, with the 8 series, you obviously can arm your main mix left and right, but you can also arm buses 1 and 2. So when I'm viewing buses here, again, if I hold my arm, it's now showing me my channels 1 through 16 arm status here on these trim pots. But on the middle row here, it's showing me my bus arm status. Well, my bus left and right are armed. I can disarm them if I don't want to record them. Bus 1 and bus 2 are not armed, but if I just press them now you can see they're armed. Okay, so the arm and the mute apply not just in channel adjustments, but also bus and output adjustments. Although obviously you can't arm an output, you can arm a bus. Okay, so let's just, the other thing I wanted to show you when you're in this view here is that if I do a quick tap, you know, without hold, if I do a quick tap while menu is being held, then it's obviously going to mute. But if I do a quick tap without holding that, it allows you to bring up the routing screen for bus. So if I want to do my routing, say for bus 1, I'll just tap this encoder here because it's bus 1, middle encoder. So, and you'll see the routing matrix come up on the 8 series here. So let's do that. Keep an eye over here. Boom. So there's my routing matrix. And now I can scroll that and route whatever I want there. Okay. And again, I can use these toggle switches down here to adjust mutes, my gain. Not that I need to do that because it's already up here on this pot here. And my send gains and all sorts from here. Now, yes, just like the question before about will these routing matrices appear on the CL-16, the CL-16 will evolve to showing these routing matrices. But I think you'll find that this works pretty well in the meantime. Okay, so let's say, oh, the other thing about, I'm just going to come out of that. So if I press that again, press it once, press it again, it drops back out to the main view. Now notice also when I quick tap that, it's actually soloing the bus. You know it's soloing because it's flashing the ring LED, just like the channels would PFL when you press those. And it also shows you in the display here that it's soloing bus 1. If I press this one, now it's soloing bus 4. And it's flashing bus 4. So it's good to know when you're in this state and you're setting a bus, as before, I can press the headphone encoder here to toggle between soloing that bus and your main mix. So if you want to make your adjustments while still listening to the main mix or whatever headphone preset you're listening to, you can toggle between that and the bus PFL. Bus soloing actually is something we just introduced in version 4, and you still have access to all this bus soloing even if you're not using the CL-16, even if you're using the 8 series as a standalone device. It's a new feature, and you can even do your bus sends there. So that's a feature there. Also, a quick tap of an output. So if I want to do my routing for, say, X4, tap the top one here, boom. And that brings up my output routing matrix here, where I can start to navigate and use these toggles to make various settings. It's all there. Okay, I'm gonna hit my home button to just get back to the home screen. I just wanted to, let's carry on where we are. So that's buses. This middle button bank, should we talk about this now? No, I'm going to come back to that after I talk about some other settings that you can do with these mode buttons. So we've covered pan, arm, delay, and bus. Now, if you look at these buttons a bit closer, you probably won't see that from the video, but they have an alternate function marks on them in italics. So pan has got high pass filter, arm has got LF, low frequency, bus has got MF, mid frequency, and delay has got HF on it, high frequency. So the alternate functions on these 4 buttons are all your, essentially your frequency adjustments or EQ adjustments for a channel. And you access those alternate functions by holding down the middle button first before pressing the relevant button here. And it tells you that it's got the marking on this middle button, Alt, standing for alternate function. So let's do that. I'm going to do Alt and then Pan, which gives me the alternate function on Pan, which is high pass filter. So we'll do that. And now you can see these 2 buttons light up blue, and it indicates that I'm in high pass filter mode. You also get these labels up here which go blue, which tell me high pass filter and the frequency for that high pass filter. So now these 2 top rows of knobs here are adjusting high pass filter parameters for all channels 1 through 16. So if I want to quickly adjust my frequency for channel 6, if I want to adjust it for channel 4, and notice as soon as I do an EQ adjustment here, it automatically brings up the EQ curve for that channel. So I'm on channel 6 EQ curve. If I go into here, I can go into other channels, all right, etc., etc. All the other ones are bypassed right now. So, but I can do that and come in here and quickly turn that channel on, etc., etc. All right. So, and to turn on or bypass a high pass filter, you actually have to press this middle knob. You can see they're active by the green icon. When it's white, it's off. So now I can turn a whole bunch of them on really quickly, and sort of then go through each one. All right, you can see the EQ curve associated with each one now. Okay, that's high pass filter. Now, if I want to adjust my low frequency band for all 16 channels, I hold the bank button, the alternate button, middle alternate button, before I press the arm button, because that's the alternate function on arm. So let's do that. They both go orange. And now I'm looking at the EQ for all 16 channels, 1 through here. Now, at the moment, most of them are darkened out because their EQs are not turned on. I can simply turn on each one just by selecting each one and then using this toggle here, which replicates that function on this toggle here, which is your pre, post, off switch. So I'm just using that. I'm selecting a channel just by touching an encoder and then running along. And when it's got a white border, it means that it's the EQ is on for that channel. The global EQ is on for that channel, but it's still that this particular band is bypassed. In this case, I'm looking at my low frequency band for all 16 channels. So I can now press any of these to unbypass them. All right. So I'm going to just come in here, toggle a few more. Let's do. Okay. So I can very quickly unarm these, and now I can see my values. So on the top row here, I have my Q value. You can see that adjusting there as I turn it for each channel. If I press this, it toggles to frequency for that channel. You get obviously totally different values. And by default, it actually comes up in frequency mode. And you can see that as I'm making adjustments here, it automatically switches the EQ display in the screen. So currently I'm looking at channel 6's EQ, because that's what I'm adjusting. If I go to channel 4 EQ, now it's looking at that EQ, press that. If I go to channel 3, right, I can look at my frequency there, right. So as you go through each channel, it automatically selects the curve in your display here, so you can see what's going on with your curve. Now you will notice here that some of these fields are orange and some of them are green. Well, that conforms to what we did with, if we go to our channel screen here, this is channel screen for 6 right here. Orange, EQ up here, green is pre, orange is post. Okay, so if I come back to there, orange, so this channel I know now is set to post fade. All these other ones are green, which means they're all set to pre-fade EQ for all these channels here. But channel 6 currently is set to post fade. So this is a really nice default mode to leave your CL-16 in. If you're at all using EQ at all, which I do, I tend to leave one of these bands permanently just selected on these mode switches. That means in my channel strip, I always have my fader, my solo, my select, my trim, my mute, and my EQ band for that channel. So it feels a bit more like an analog console to me at that point. Okay, so that's a really quick mode. Now, your mid-frequency bands and your high-frequency bands are pretty much identical in operation to the mid-frequency, and I can very quickly switch between those bands by holding the Alt button and then switching to the other. Hold middle button, then switch between the various bands. So that's low frequency, mid frequency, high frequency, mid frequency, low frequency. And remember, it's switching all 16 top rows of knobs here for that particular EQ band. I think majority of production sound mixers, and I could be wrong here, the majority of production sound mixers who are using EQ will typically have a high pass filter for low frequency roll off, and then one band for dealing with like sort of slightly sort of muffled lapel mics, maybe which are sort of under thick clothing or something like that. So just choose, because all the bands are 20 to 20 kilohertz, if you're just using one band, it doesn't really matter which one you use. I would use low frequency because you do have like a shelf as well as a peak. And there, oops, ruin my image there. All right, so that's EQ, and it's very to switch between, as you can see. All right, so that's all the alternate functions, and remember, all those EQ related functions are on alternate functions. So it's quite easy for your brain to become accustomed to. Oh, I want to do an EQ. I have the middle button first. Okay, let's come out of that and look at the last function here on these 5 buttons, because these 5 buttons are really crucial to unwrapping much of the flexibility of the CL-16, the bank button. And some of you may never even use this. I mean, if you're not using channels 17 through 32, then you might not use this mode at all. And in which case, if you don't want access to 17 through 32, you might find it good to disable the bank function altogether, which I can show you how to do now. What you do is you go into menu. So menu shown here, and I scroll down, you'll find a menu called controllers here at the bottom. Press go in there, and there's a new menu called CL-16. That will only be available or ungrayed out when you have a CL-16 connected. Go in there, and then there's a function called bank disable here. So if you turn that on, it will disable the bank function, and then that way you won't be able to accidentally access channel 17 through 32, which will simplify operation for you. For now, I'm going to leave that off because I want to show you some stuff to do with 17 through 32. So just going back to home here, remember your meter button is your friend. Home always takes you back to the default view. So yeah, the bank button, and obviously this is automatically disabled, by the way, if you're using it with an 888, because an 888 only has 16 channels. It's only the Scorpio where the bank button is used. And even even if you disable the bank button, or the bank button's disabled, it will still act as your alternate key for enabling the secondary alternate functions on these mode buttons, the EQ functions. So it's still active there. Okay, so let's see what happens when I press this bank button by itself. The idea is it's going to show me the meters and the channel strips for channels 17 through 32. Let's do that. Bam. Now, let's do that again. You'll see the background color of the meters change to green. It's much brighter in reality. I've just turned the brightness right down. Oh, look, there you go. That's pretty clean. So you can see that it's a very clear indication that now you're looking at your bank, and it's imperative you know that, because you don't want to be adjusting a channel in a different bank to the one you think you're on. So that's the first thing. The button goes green and starts pulsing. Background goes green, and your label in the bottom left corner here says 17 through 32. Watch that as I toggle it out. So now that's 1 through 16, and that's 17 through 32. All right. So when we're in bank mode, what's different? Well, we know for a fact that these faders are not going to do anything different because they're our analog PNG super smooth faders. They're not motorized. Okay. And the trims, because these are analog trims, they're not going to do anything. These are always 1 through 16. So even in bank mode, when you're looking at 17 through 32, your trim pots and your faders are always access to 1 through 16. Always. You must get that in your mind. And they will still show the metering value on the ring LEDs, but the LCD is now showing us 17 through 32. Just a tip, you know, if you are using 17 through 32, I would prefer to put the channels that I don't need as regular access to on those channels, because I want the channels that I'm really going to be mixing regularly to be on my faders here, so channels 1 through 16. But for like plant mics and ambient and just the occasional speaking role, maybe you'd want to throw that in 17 through 32 and not use up your main bank of 16. That's the way I'd do it anyway. So when you're in this view, essentially everything operation remains the same. So a PFL toggle, if we move that left, it does actually now switch to controlling 17 through 32. So now you can see that actually the flashing LED is on the middle row here as I PFL. When I was in channels 1 through 16, which I'm going to go back to now, flicking a PFL makes the lower knob flash. Okay, so coming back to bank up here, and I do this, now it's going to PFL my top bank. So at the moment here, I'm PFLing channel 21, and it tells me that as well again in the display over here, PFL 21. All right. Likewise, and the same with the way these toggle switches worked with channels 1 through 16. If you move them right, just come up inside of that, and move a toggle switch right, it's going to select that channel for adjustment. So in this case, it's going to be channel 21. Okay, it PFLs it, white background to indicate your channel number here, and then all the different parameter adjustments for channel 21. Now notice there are fewer. Channels 17 through 32 do not have EQ adjustments. It's only channels 1 through 16. So there's no auto mix for channels 17 through 32. That's a function that only applies to 1 through 16. So you will see fewer parameters that you can adjust on your encoders, but you can still send any of your channels 17 through 32 to any bus, either as pre, post, or by its own send value. Okay. You can still apply limiters. You can still access the source screen here. So you can bring up a different source. I can still name that channel. So I can do a lot here. I'm just going to come out of that select. I can also, obviously, when I'm in bank mode, if I hold the arm button, now I'm arming channel 17 through 32, but notice I'm pressing the middle encoders. So right now I'm arming 18 through 27, but I still have access to my arms for channels 1 through 16, even if I'm in bank mode, but only when I'm holding the arm button, right? So you get a good, this is actually, when you're in bank mode, it's great to be able to see every arm active at once. It's pretty cool. All right. Now, what else can we do in bank mode? Well, while I'm in bank mode and I can see that I'm there and it's a green background, I can go into pan. And now I'm adjusting pan. It indicates that here. So it's like a dual mode. Now I'm in bank and pan. So now I can adjust the pan for each of these channels 17 through 32. You can see that by the indication. And remember to quickly get back to center, just tap a pot and it goes back there. And I've still got access to all my outputs, X1 through X2 up here on the top row, as indicated by here. So there you go. That is my bank. Now, obviously, the thing we haven't mentioned is, well, how do I adjust the mix levels for 17 through 32? Well, you have to make sure you're not in pan mode. By default, when I go into into bank mode, this middle row of encoders, their default function is to act as faders for 17 through 32. So, you know, they're not linear faders, so they're less easy to mix, but you still have access to them. And that's why I suggested as a recommendation before, to put your least accessed channel sources on 17 through 32 if you can, because you only have rotary faders for that, but still pretty easy. And you'll see the level of those channels come up on the ring LEDs as well. Remember, I can still use my mute control to mute a channel. Hold that. Remember, you have to hold the menu button to mute a channel, so I can mute any of these channels as well. All right, all the same functionality, PFLs, mutes, selects, etc. there. All right. Now, you may prefer, some people may prefer, I'm going to bring this up now, some people may prefer that they actually do need access to channel 17 through 32 on linear faders. Now, the way we've designed the CL system, or the 8 series system, is that we have this USB MIDI protocol, which really opens up the ability to have multiple controllers all connected at the same time to control your setup. And actually right now, I also have an icon connected to my CL-16. So I've connected to one of the USB-A ports on the rear of my CL-16, a USB-A cable, and that's running down into this icon down here, okay, which is currently on, okay? And you can see as I move, currently it's mapped to channels 1 through 8, okay? So if I move my 8 fader, it's on my, I'll show you this a bit more detail. So I'm currently moving my 8 fader here on my CL-16. Now, because the icon is mapped to channels 1 through 8, it's following, all right? But I don't want to do that. Why have the icon duplicate? That's pointless. I want to actually maybe route my icon to channels 17 through 32 or 17 through 24. So I can do that here. So I use the bank button on my icon M+ here. And now that's controlling 9 through 16. So that's 16 right now. I'm moving the 16th fader on my CL-16, but I'm going to actually map it to my channel 17 through 32. So now I'm moving my channel 8 fader on my icon, and that's effectively going to be, well, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, because I've mapped it to 17 through 24. So in theory, as I move this icon fader, you should see channel 24 change its value. So yes, there it is, it's changing its value. So if you do want more linear faders, just hook up an icon M+. For now, yeah, we have had the question a few times, can I run this with 2 CL-16s? Right now, they can't be set to separate banks. They will duplicate the same bank 1 through 16. We're evaluating, I mean, it's something we can do, it's a software thing, but we're evaluating whether that's really necessary. I don't think anyone's going to be using 2 CL-16s. I could be proven wrong, but if suddenly there's a massive wave of people saying, I need to buy 2 CL-16s, can you implement that? Then well, I think it's a reasonable likelihood. Okay, so in the meantime, this icon, which is a very good value for money motorized fader controller, is ideal for adding extra faders if you don't want to use these middle encoders for your faders in bank mode, right? Another nice thing, by the way, is you could put the icon by pressing this button into bus mode. Now we're using this to control our buses. So you could have your CL-16 do be 1 through 16, and instead of having to press this bus button to adjust your bus levels and mutes and routing, all that stuff, you could actually just set your icon here to bus mode by pressing that. Now these are my bus masters. Okay, so there's all sorts of configurations you can do with an icon M+ and a CL-16. Actually, you could use 2 icon M pluses to give you 16 faders for controlling 17 through 32. So anyway, this is a nice setup. I can slide that under and bring it out when I need to get access to these other channels or buses. Right? So that's something worth considering. All right. We've covered the majority of this, but there's some other really cool things I want to go over. Joe, can we take some questions at this point?
Absolutely. Going back to track arming, this is a really cool feature on the 8 series a lot of people aren't used to yet. People are asking, when you arm a track or disarm a track during recording, what's the file look like afterwards?
Right. Well, what it's actually doing is seamlessly splitting to a new take. It will have the same metadata and a file name, but it's actually splitting seamlessly to a new take. There's no way with a poly file, if you're recording poly files, that you can split into the same file. It's just an impossibility. So the way to do it, the way we do it is when you do that on the fly, it's just creating seamlessly, sample seamlessly, new files with the exact same file name with just an appended letter at the end to let you know that it's been a split, and those will join perfectly in post. Okay. And now when you're doing these record arming and disarming during record, it's really nice because you can actually, oftentimes you're not just bringing in one actor, maybe you're bringing in a group of them, and you don't want, each time you arm a talent for it to create a split, then like a second later when you bring in the next one, it splits again. That would end up with ridiculously crazy number of files. So the way we've done it is that you can hold a button down and bring in multiple talent, and it's only when you release the button that then it splits seamlessly into that new file, and it will split with all of those new armed tracks in that new recording. Does that help everybody? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think they got everybody. Another question. When I set a dedicated send level for X1, X2, can I also decide whether that is pre or post, or is it always pre?
Um, so we're not talking. Are we talking about buses or outputs here? I just want to be specific here because X1 and X2 are actually outputs.
Correct. So I would assume outputs.
Right. Okay. So an output. Yes, if I was to, and you can see this on the display here. If currently we're viewing outputs because we're on the home page. If I tap an output here, say X1, boom, it's going to come up with the routing screen right here. So as you know, you can only select one source per output. It can be any of the ISOs and it can be pre or post, right? So it's going to be dependent upon the trim level and the fade or the fader level, depending whether it's pre or post. If you're wanting to do your totally own independent send that isn't dependent upon your faders, then you would need to go via a bus. Come in here, you'd go via a bus and you would set up your bus with whatever you're sending there. And then you'd route that bus to an output. So then you'd come back to your output here and you'd select which, here, if you look down in the screen here, which bus you want that output to be. And you've obviously got a choice of 12, actually 14 if you include the headphone left and right. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I believe so. Channels 13 through 16, when they're armed, turning the trims all the way down turns off the channel. During record, will these tracks stay armed? No. So I think there's a second.
So the question was, when channels 13 through 16 are set to off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those will stay down. But then if you were to turn them on, will it split the file like you've armed them?
Good question. I'm not quite sure I'm following the exact workflow there. I think the answer is yes. So are we talking about this? Because there's multiple ways to turn off a channel.
Mm-hmm.
You can turn it physically, off from the menu. So let's just try this. I'm going to go into my channel screen here. So channel screen for 13 right here. I'm going to access its source using this encoder and essentially turn that off, right? But I think they wanted it armed first. I think they wanted it armed first. So channel 13 is armed. I think the question might be that if I just turn that off from here, will it, obviously it's off now because it's not on, but if I turn that on now, let's see, by doing that, will it come up in the armed state? Yes, it does. And I think the question is, does that happen during record?
Yes.
I can't understand why you'd want to do this. There's a much easier way of wanting to do this. I don't see there's actually any point in turning that channel off. You may as well just mute it. So this seems to be a very long way of going about whatever you're wanting to do here. So come in here, bring in this. So it's armed right now. So if I then turn that off, yeah, it did a split. So yes, the answer is yes, but that is a very contrived way of doing what you're wanting to do. If I would simply leave my channel on here. I'm going to quickly just turn that on to, well, it can be 1 for now. Okay. And what I would do, so there's channel 3, it's not armed. You said you didn't want it armed. Okay, boom. So I would just mute my channel there. Actually, you did want it armed, right? Okay, but it's muted now. Well, no, I can see why, because you're essentially going to be recording silence at that point. I'm still not quite sure what you're wanting to do.
Yeah,
what the workflow is.
He said arm channel 13, turn down the trim. It seems to disarm during recording. So yeah, 13 through 16, the on status is controlled by the trim value.
No, there is no turning off using the trim pot.
Okay.
On channels 13 through 16. This does not have a click off function like it does on the 8 series. Only the 8 series have clickable off pots, and they are only for 1 through 12.
Mm-hmm.
These pots here are only trims. They don't activate or deactivate a channel.
Okay. So I think the question is then, yeah, so if the trim is all the way down on the CL-16 and it's gray, is it still being recorded as silence then, since the trim's all the way down?
If it's gray, then no, it's not being recorded.
Okay.
It has to be red to be recorded.
Okay. Then let us know. I think that covered it for you. They are not infinity coders, correct?
Well, some of them are, some of them are not. So these two top roads, if you want to call them infinity encoders, fine. Multifunction knobs, continuous turn knobs, infinity knobs. These are multifunction and infinity encoders. You've got 32 of them. These ones here, by design, are not. They have end stops, and that is totally by design, because sometimes you want to adjust a value and feel where it is in its range without looking. So there you go.
Okay. Can the CL-16 screen and pots luminance or brightness, can they be operated separately? And if
Yes.
we see it, yes.
Yeah. So again, let me just demonstrate this. Going to go back to just going to go back to channels there. Okay. So if I come into my menu, scroll down to controllers, and then we go into CL-16 menu. You've got these two menus, LED brightness, and which I can crank up really bright like so, or all the way down so you're hardly illuminating. And then you've got your LCD brightness, which basically goes all the way to there, all the way down to there. So yeah, you've got independent control. So you can stop this making it look like a Christmas tree if you want to. All right. Any other questions before I move on to the remaining aspects of operation, which I want to discuss too?
Just a few. What are the groups referred to in the CL-16 menu on the Scorpio? It says you can change their colors.
Yes, we're going to get to that. Oh, let's
Excellent.
do that now then.
Sure.
Why not? So, sorry, just going to take a drink of water here. So, channel linking and channel grouping, something we haven't really spoken about yet, but let's just, for instance, link channels 5 and 6. Okay, so I'm going to go to my channel 5 screen. Okay, so that's here, brings up the screen here, and I'm just going to set that to linked here. You can see the linking field. Just going to come here, I'm going to say link that. Okay, great. So now you can see that these two fields here do not have a divider, right? So now this is my trim control, and you've got your fader control there, so it's linked. And similar thing works with MS linking as well. Same with outputs. If say, for instance, I want to link 8, 7, and 8, they're unlinked at the minute because there's a divider between them. So if I want to link, it brings up my routing screen here. If I then go to the top left corner and then link those, you can now see there's no divider, and adjusting just the one pot will treat that as a stereo output pair and also as a mute pair and what have you. Okay, and likewise with buses. You know, for instance, right now my bus left and right are linked, bus 1 and 2 are not, but I could easily link those by tapping that, bringing up the screen here, hitting link. Okay, so now there's no divider between them, and now all functions like muting will apply to both just by hitting one pot, or even arming. Okay, so that's linking. Channel grouping is obviously slightly different. This is what you'd use, for instance, as an example. If you're doing an ambisonics recording with 4 mics, and you want to record that group of 4 mics with just like a single fader. So let's do that right now. Coming back to my home screen, and just going to get rid of some of these colors because it's confusing me a little bit. Right. So I'm also going to let's just do this on channel 1. In fact, I'm just going to unlink everything. So I want to show some of the real cool flexibility here. So everything's unlinked. Channel 1 here is off still, so I'm going to bring that in. Cool. All right, so let's create a group, say on 1 through 4. We know how to do that. So this might be an ambisonics group, for instance. I'm going to go to my menu, press the menu button here, and go to my channel setup menu. Hopefully you can see that, and go down to channel grouping. Come in here, and here's I have 4 different groups that I can create. So I'm going to create group 1, and then I've enabled that by highlighting it. Then I'm going to go to 1, 2. I'm going to put, say, 4 channels in there, and basically you have an indicator which tells you their group. So just above the name field here at the bottom, it's got an indicator which shows you which channels are part of that group. If I was to take one out of the group, say channel 3, now it's just 1, 2, and 3 in that group, right? If I was to put, say, 6 in that group, or 7, now that's in the group. So they don't even have to be consecutive, right? So there's one group. I'm just going to take that one out there and put that one back in there. All right, let's do another group. Let's say I want to turn on 2. And I'm going to make this group be 5, 6, and 8, right? And notice this second group has a different color. Don't know if you can see that here. That's sort of like a brownish color. You can change the colors to indicate these groups here. But before we do that, let's just go and create another group. So I'm going to do group 3 here, and say put 7 and 9, 10, 13, 14, what have you. All right. So now you can see they've got their own color as well, so blue. So to change the colors there, you go into your meters, into your menu, go to controllers, down to CL-16, into group colors. And now I can configure them. Group 3, I don't really like the color there. I'm going to give that pink, right? Or I could make it light green. So, and I might make group 2, I don't know, violet. So you've got these different ways to flag your groups, which might be interesting for reality type productions where you have one group of contestants in one side of the room and another group in a different room, and you want to be able to very quickly control those different groups with one fader. So in this case, I might have group 1 here, which is channels 1 through 4 on that fader, and then actor group 2 on that fader there, and then another group here on this fader. Okay, there you go. That's groups. Anything else on that before I move on? I'm presuming not.
When you link two outputs, how can you pan channels so that they send to the linked channels as a stereo spread?
There is a lot of information there.
Yeah.
You're talking about outputs linking for a bit and then channel linking, which, yeah, I need a bit more information what you're trying to do, if you can. What you're actually trying to do, send a stereo input pair to a stereo output? Is that what's wanting to be done?
Yeah, let us know, Chris. We might need a little more information on that.
But yes, you can do that. You just link your pair of input channels and then route that pair to your outputs as per, and then link the outputs. So anyway, let's talk about these buttons here on this side of the display, because we haven't really focused on this at all right now. And there's some cool stuff here. So at the top here, obviously a stop and record button. Record, guess what? Yes, it does that. Makes it go red, bright red, and the display goes bright red as well. So it's pretty hard to not see that your machine is recording, okay? Yes, and I can hit record during record and split during record, all that stuff. We've got the file name just above the scene taken note fields here in the display. So that's the current file. Then we have a field, this is like a map to tell you what functions you programmed on these user buttons. More about that in a minute. Then we have our time counters. So we have a big time code field here, absolute time, and then we have sample rate and sync setting, frame rate and headphone field here. So this corresponds a little bit to what's in this screen, but just larger. And then at the bottom here, we actually have our return meters. So returns A, B, and C, which is essentially gives you another 6 line inputs, 6 unbalanced line inputs. And so these can actually be routed. The signals that come in here can just be monitored, but if you want, you can route them to channels 1 through 32 as well. So yeah, that brings your analog input count up to 22, which is pretty nifty. Okay, so let's just stop here a second, and we're going to do some metadata editing. Now, yes, I mean, I think you're all familiar with the fact that you can enter metadata directly from the 8 series itself. You can do it from a virtual on-screen keyboard, or you can plug in a USB keyboard. You can plug in that USB keyboard into the back of the CL-16 now, into one of the USB-A ports. You can obviously do your metadata editing via the SD Remote app on an Android or an iOS device. If you're using an iOS iPad or an iPad, you'd need to do it by Bluetooth, but with an Android device, you can either hardwire it via USB cable or Bluetooth. But rather than focus on the metadata editing now, I know from my point of view, I just love using the tablet as my metadata tool. It's just so easy. So, but it's actually pretty easy from here now as well. So we have this below the mode buttons that we spoke about before. We've got this bank of metadata buttons, which is very similar to the CL12, but it does offer some improvements, big improvements over the CL12. So we have scene take notes, and that corresponds to the data in the S, T, and N fields on the display here. So while I'm in stop, I can choose what take I want to edit the metadata on. I can edit the next take's metadata. I can enter the current take's metadata, the one that I've either just recorded or the one that's currently being recorded. Or I can edit previous takes metadata, although the previous takes metadata is not available in the current release, but it will be coming in a subsequent release pretty soon. So just with this particular release, if I want to edit the next takes, so I'm about to go into record, so I want to enter metadata for the next take coming up, I can tap the stop button, and when I do that, it changes the STN scene take notes field and the file name to yellow. Do that again. So it toggles between white, yellow, white, yellow. When it's yellow, it comes up with the word next here. And so now you know that when you do an edit, it's going to apply to the next take and not your current take. So at this point, I can press my scene button, and it's going to bring up the scene entry field for my next take. And now I can use my encoders down here to enter letters. Let's just do that. I'm going to call this take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, and hit save there. So now you can see that that is the name of my next take. If I press that again, it's going to show me the current take. The last take I recorded was T05. I didn't enter any metadata. Pressing that again is showing me that's what's going to be recorded next. I can edit the take number as well from here. So if I press take button, it's going to allow me to, maybe I want to start at take 4. So just do that. And take 2, let's do that there, there you go. So now it's going to start at take 4. This is the next take, and hit notes. If I know that I want a specific note before I start, I can do that here. Okay, so let's just call that AAA now. And now that's the information that's going to be recorded into the next take. Hit record, and it automatically switches back to showing the current take. Now, the current take that's being recorded is the one that I just entered metadata for, because I was in stop mode. I was entering before going into record. So that's become my current take. And had I made a mistake, I can edit that metadata on the fly. Okay, and I can come back here and say, oh, I made a wrong setting there, so I'm going to put an 18 that should be like that, and it'll edit it on the fly. And this is all handled, and it's entering all those metadata edits across all your 3 media that you're recording to, and it's handling all the take management stuff of that. So that's all pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Come back out of here. I can edit the next take metadata again, or edit the metadata that I've just done here. Simple as that. Now, as I said, in upcoming software, you'll be able to use rewind and fast forward buttons to select any take. Currently, U1 and U3 are set to scrolling backwards and forwards. So I can actually select a previous take, and you can see which one is coming up, and it's going to display here the relevant metadata for that previous take. And then if I wanted to edit it, I can do it from here too. So this is much more flexible than it ever was on the 688 and CL-12. Okay, so that's that, the metadata section. We've got 3 dedicated buttons here for scene increment. If you need to go from 100 scene 100 to scene 100A because you're doing a different camera angle or whatever, you can all do that from here. You can set a take to be false from here, and you can also circle a take. All very easy to do. Now let's talk about user programmable buttons. Okay, actually, let's take some questions on metadata editing. Any questions?
Not specifically on metadata.
Okay, we'll move on.
Sure.
Okay, so we have here 5 user programmable buttons, U1 through U5, and their function is described by this little map in the display. So U1 currently is rewind, 2 is my play button, so if I hit that, oh, the screen goes green, and everything's hunky-dory. Okay, green. If I hit that again, it's now in play pause. Okay, so hit play again. If I hit rewind, it's going to go blue. So that allows me to scrub. I can do, if I go into pause and I press my headphone encoder, is it headphone encoder or this one? I can't remember now. This one? No, this one? Oh, I can't remember what it was now. There's a scrub function. God, I should know that. Anyway, I'll worry about that shortly. So what I'm trying to state here is that these buttons here have certain functions: rewind, play, fast forward. This one currently is set to SL6 receiver overview. I don't have an SL6 connected, so it's a bit pointless having that. And this U5 is set to my shortcut to my timecode jam screen, which allows me to monitor timecode differences between external and internal to check there's no drift, which is really cool. Okay, so, but how can we map functions here? Very simple. But before I say that, you actually have more than just 5. Remember this Alt button up here, which brought up the alternate functions on these 4 surrounding mode buttons? Well, you can use that to do combo shortcuts as well. So boom and that, and U1 will give me an Alt plus U2, Alt plus U5. They'll all give me an extra 5 programmable functions. So that gives you a total of 10. And actually, you can map a lot of these other buttons. I think you can map up to about 70 different buttons, but it's only U1 through U5 that are given a label. So put your most important ones on U1 through 5. Let's show you how to map here. So you come in here to your menu, scroll down to controllers, and then you go to the mapping menu, which is the first one on the list. At the moment, I have nothing mapped, But what I'm going to do is learn. There's this learn function on the return toggle. So I'm going to just do that from here. Okay, so when I hit this, it says learn controller button. Okay, so press a button. I'm going to make my U4 button. I'm going to program it to be, say, my auto mix. So I'm going to press that. And now it's identified that button. It goes, okay, you pressed U4. And now I choose what function I want to go to that. So I'm going to press select that. And it's going to bring me up this list. Huge list of different functions I could map to that particular button. I'm going to just put my auto mix on and off, which I find really useful for quickly checking the effect of my auto mixer. So it's there now, and you can see in my map here, it says, okay, auto mixer on off. So I know that's what that does, and it does. And you can see that that illuminates when it's on and off. Okay, so it's currently on. And if we were to crank up our faders a little bit, you can see the Dugan bars come up there to show us that we're actually really truly mixing, and we've got some Dugan auto mixing going on. And you can see the amount of attenuation, Dugan attenuation being applied on these ring LEDs as well. So if I turn that off, ooh, nothing there. Okay. The auto mix is off. Now it's on. So very quickly to nice to pipe. So that's one of my favorite uses of that. I am sure you will find many more. Okay, and I could map all of these. Now I can do let's do another, if I wanted to learn a combo button press. So let's say I'm going to hit learn again. It's asking me to learn. So what I do is I hold the alternate button, and maybe I put Alt U1. Okay, so now it's identified that it's a combo. What function shall I allocate to that? I don't know. Let's say bring up my take list for what it's worth. Where is that? Here it is, take list. Bang. Okay, so in theory, remember, it's not going to give the labeling for alternate functions, only other functions. We could probably improve that. But if I hold Alt and that, it brings up my take list. Okay, so boom, there you go. All right. Having said that, there's a default shortcut there for take list just by doing menu and encoder, which is actually a shortcut we took from the 8 series. All right. There's those buttons. The remaining buttons are very straightforward. We have the ability to monitor our 3 returns here. When you hit a return button, it illuminates, and it will tell you in the screen here what you're monitoring: return B, return C, and then return 1. Now with the Scorpio, there's actually 2 returns, 1 and 2. So, but we only have 1 button. If you want to access return 2, hold your headphone encoder and then the button. There you go. Now it says return 2. All right. Below that are our 2 talkback circuits, COM1 and COM2. Activate each one just by pressing the button. When you hit slate, it tells you that both are active it tells you you're slating by the fact that these 2 are illuminated together. It also says slate in the display here as well. When you're just COM1 is active, it says that in your display. Just COM2, it says that in the display as well. And then the buttons down here, really we've spoken about. These essentially just duplicate every function that you have around the actual 8 series' front panel LCD. So, and that enables you to access any function at all. Like I said, the meter and the menu buttons here are important. The meter button being probably the most important. It's your home key, will always get you back to wherever. And then the menu button just for holding it to enable you to mute any channel bus or output. One that I haven't spoken about, which relates to buses. I mean, I spoke about how we can access our bus masters by pressing the bus button up here. Now we see our bus masters where we can adjust the levels, etc. But the one thing I didn't talk about, which is actually really quite important, is the bus sends on faders modes. And what that means essentially is when you enter a bus sends on fader mode, it brings you up the faders for all the channels that you want to mix to that bus on a fader. So for example, if I want to do a mix to bus 5, and I want to be able to mix all 16 channels to bus 5 independently, what I do is I hold bus button here, and move, while I'm holding that button, move a toggle switch to the right as if you're trying to enter a channel screen. And then it basically enters bus 5's bus sends on faders mode. And you know you're in a bus sends on fader mode because you go blue. The background goes blue, like shown here. Now, pressing these middle encoders determines how I route each of my channels to that bus. So currently I'm sending all my channels 1 through 16 to bus 5 pre-fade. That's now post-fade. I'm sending all my odd channels now to bus 5 post-fade, and my even channels to my bus 5 pre-fade. Now, I find the most useful case for this is bus sends on faders mode, where you set them, press them again to be blue, like this. Now that means I'm sending these 16 channels via their own fader gain, not by the fader setting here. So now the amount you send to that bus for each channel is affected by these knobs here. So you can very easily create a mix of channels 1 through 16 to this bus 5 just by doing that. Now, if I want to quickly set up a separate mix to bus, say 8 or 3, so I'm going to hold my bus button and move the toggle. Okay, now I'm on bus 3. Now I can have a totally independent mix, even from bus 5. I could have 12 totally independent mixes. It's really quite cool. So that's bus sends on faders mode for you. Back to home. Any questions?
Yeah, just a few here. Can a CL-12 be connected to the CL-16?
It can, but there's probably little point in doing that right now, because you cannot set the CL-12 to a separate bank. So you'd end up just duplicating channels 1 through 12, which is pointless. And as before, like I was saying, if you really want to expand the CL-16 with more faders, the best way to do it is to plug in something like an icon M+, and that'll give you, you can add 2 icons to give you an extra 16 fader control for all 32 channels. That would be my recommendation there. But you can use a CL-12, yes, if you really wanted to. But
is there any calibration needed for the faders or knobs?
None.
All right. Are any of the encoders user definable?
Other than all the different functions that I've already given you, at this point, no, they are not user definable. I'll be interested to, when people start using this in earnest, what functions they want to be user programmable on the knobs, and how they want that, and how that works in reality. So let's see.
Sure. From the CL-16, can I use saved phrases into notes?
Yes, absolutely. So you can just hit your notes button here and then hit that, and now this is your phrase list manager right there. I don't have anything entered right now. I guess I can very quickly enter a few. So let's just do that. Okay, save. So here's my phrase list. So coming back to my main page here, going to notes, bring up my phrase list, and then select one. There you go, it's in there. As quick as that.
Any benefit to looping headphones from Scorpio through the CL-16?
Well, the benefit is that you don't have to have a cable which runs all the way up to your CL-16. It's just ease of access to plug in. That's all it is. In terms of quality, audio performance, or anything like that, no, there's no difference.
Okay. Does banking work with your bus sends on faders to give access to 17 through 32?
Yes, it does. So let's go into a bus sends on faders. So bus 3 in this case. Here's my bus sends for 1 through 16. As you can see, you can tell by the numbers down here. If I then press the bank button when I'm in bus sends and faders mode, you can now see I've got channel 17 through 32 here, and I can adjust the sends of those channels right there and even set them pre or post fade. So absolutely.
Okay. How do you send playback to a specific output or com send?
I love these questions. Playback only. Well, so what you're going to do here, and you're going to select your output. So let's say, look at X5. When I press X5, it's a knob here. You can see it brings up, I don't know if you can even see that, but let's just pull that down a bit more. You probably can't see that very well, but I'm in the output matrix here right now. And so you can configure whatever track, ISO track, you want to go to that output during playback. I mean, it's essentially the same as whatever you've got routed to that track, to that output during live input, essentially. And so it could be, if you want to play back a certain thing, it would be dependent upon this matrix here in the display. And because bus 1, LR1 and 2 can also be recorded, you can select those to be output during playback on a particular output as well. So there's not an individual playback matrix that's different from your live input matrix at this time. It's essentially whatever you've got there going live is going to play back whatever was on those tracks during recording. Now you do have also a few functions down here which enables you to automatically mute outputs during different transport states. So if you want to mute the output during play so that it doesn't suddenly freak someone out on set, you can do that. That's where we're at with that.
Okay. Don't have any other questions coming in right this second.
Okay, well, I'm hoping that this has been a bit more of a deep dive into how you operate this unit. And really, you can see that it brings all the potential of the 8 series to life. So it allows you to do things much quicker. It doesn't take long for the muscle memory to develop, but just bear in mind that there's so much you can do here, with 12 mixes at your disposal and bus stems on faders and 32 channels. With anything, if you're doing complex productions where you're utilizing all of this stuff, you want to familiarize yourself with it. It's just as if you were going to purchase yourself a new digital Allen Heath or Yamaha or Digico console. You wouldn't just go out and start using it live in a complex production straight away. You'd just familiarize yourself how to get to the various routing and different modes. So, but it does come very quickly.
Okay. Let me see. From Rudy, question. Can you use the return input as a return from Video Village for replays via the 10-pin routed to comms for replay of a previous take?
Can you slow down and say that
Sorry.
one step at a time?
Can you use the return input as a return from Video Village?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes, and then route it to people on set, presumably. Yeah, absolutely.
So. Yep.
Every output, all outputs, even Dante outputs, USB outputs, analog outputs, not AES outputs, but analog, Dante, USB. You can take any ISO bus or return and route them accordingly. So absolutely.
Back that panning question. So let me just read it to you right in here. Can't see a time where I would want to pan a channel to the mix, but it could be handy for sending out to speakers in a playback situation. Is it possible to have the panning feature of a specific channel only go to a linked output for speakers on set? Which I answered in the chat. I'm not sure if the chat's visible for everybody. You would have to just duplicate the channel and have a different pan setting in that channel. If you're just sending the one channel. If that answers.
Are they specifically want to actually be able to pan to that music playout, or just be left, center, right?
Hasn't mentioned. So
okay.
Chris, are you looking for?
I think that would be a question we'll take offline, because it sounds like there's some very detailed specifics to that. But I'm pretty sure the CL-16 can handle that. It's just which way. There's probably several ways actually you could do that.
Right.
Whatever's neatest for your real world application.
Yeah. So a real world example would be really helpful. From Ben, CL-16 has great build quality, capability, and feel. Performs smoothly right out of the gate. Nice work on the demo. Thank you to the SD team. You are very welcome, Ben. We're really glad you like it. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, Ben has one in hand.
I know, yeah. Ben's got one in front of him.
Congratulations.
I know we've got a lot.
Congratulations.
Yeah, a lot of CL-16s are going out. I know a lot of them are hitting dealers. I know Gotham has a few that people are picking up today, which is really exciting. So again, this is my spiel that I give on all of our things here. Make sure you register your product at sounddevices.com. It extends your warranty, and it makes sure that you're hip to all of our firmware updates that are coming out. Let's see. So I think that's it from me. Anything else, Paul?
No, I'll just say goodbye.
All right.
In the flesh. Yeah, thanks everybody for listening. I know it's been a long 2-hour one, this one, but I felt it was worth doing, because it's not until you get into the real details that you sort of start to understand the paradigms of operations. So thanks for being patient with me, and all the best. And anyone who's got that CL-16 in front of them, have fun, and your feedback be welcome.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thanks everybody so much. If you have any questions, I did link the CL-16 manual a little earlier in the guide that is just on the product page of our website. And I think that's it for us. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks so much for coming.